Hello there, everybody, and today I'm here to review Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the 80s show. I wanted to review the 80s show for a while now, since I'm busy reviewing the 2003 show. I might as well talk about the 80s show eventually. Season 1's only have 5 episodes, so I thought, why not talk about it? Since Tubi finally has the entire show on there, all 10 seasons, where Paramount Plus couldn't even get all 10 seasons on there. They just have the first 3 seasons. But I have a wild history with the 80s show. I always remember having the Cowabunga Classics DVD, and I got to watch some of the episodes of the show, which were basically like the highlight episodes. I also got to see seasons 1, 2, 3 on DVD, and then eventually I saw seasons 8, 9, and 10 on DVD. I couldn't track down the other seasons since I was collecting these seasons at Target, but I don't know what else to say about my history with it, other than I got a few of the 80s action figures. There's just so much to talk about with the 80s Ninja Turtles show. Since there's so many episodes, I'm going to try to do my best to review these episodes. I'm not going to do like a weekly episode. It's going to be a little bit more tricky with seasons 3 and 4 since, there's like a ton of them. But we'll do our best. The first season of the show was definitely probably the best of the seasons of the show because they definitely took their time when making this show, because originally this show was just meant to be a toy advertisement for the action figures that were coming out at the time. I bet it was like super nostalgic to be watching these 5 episodes, and because of the popularity of the show, they greenlit an entire series instead of having it just be a 5-episode arc. But I feel like this season is definitely consistent. The other seasons, it kind of just becomes the Saturday morning cartoon. Not saying that's a bad thing, but this season kind of just feels like there's an actual plot, because each Ninja Turtle episode is mainly just the Turtles versus Shredder in some bizarre scenario, or they'll go up against some villain that's meant to sell an action figure. But because of the popularity of the Mirage comic books, they were able to finally make a cartoon, but it had to not be based off that comic. It was mainly those comics, the Mirage ones, are meant to be completely separate from this show. And because of this show, we probably wouldn't be getting the popularity of the Ninja Turtles that it is today. The ones that we know today, the ones that love pizza, the multicolored masks, because originally in the Mirage comics, they were all red masks. But because they wanted to tell the turtles apart, they all had them be blue, red, purple, and orange. Let's go over each episode. So the first episode, Turtle Track. So this is where we meet the reporter, April O'Neil, played by the amazing Renee Jacobs, who I've met on a few live streams on her Instagram. She's a very nice lady. But Renee Jacobs plays April, and she works for Channel 6, but she doesn't exactly get along with her coworkers, that being the boss, Bern Thompson, which is basically the J.J. Jameson of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle universe, which is ironic. But apparently she has to get a story, and she's like reporting various crimes that are happening throughout the city. But she is getting spied on by a mysterious figure, which I'll get to more in a bit. But April gets jumped by a group of goons who look oddly familiar, but she ends up falling into the sewer, just like in the Mirage comic. So there are some parallels, but they had to make it kid-friendly, of course. But the Turtles end up showing up and actually saving April. But once she sees them, she passes out. But she then wakes up to see be greeted by a rat, who is none other than Master Splinter, played by Peter Ramsey, who unfortunately passed away not that long ago. May he rest in peace. But he is amazing as Splinter. He's probably one of my favorite Splinter voices. I do like the 2003 version of Splinter's voice and Hun Lee. For the 2012 show, I'll go on all day about the Splinter voices. But April is shocked to learn about this, and she almost wants to report the Turtles for living underground and being secreted. But they decide to basically someone hold her hostage a little bit. But she decides to stay in the Turtles' lair and learn about their origin. They are from... What we do learn is that this version of Splinter, instead of being a rat who gets mutated, it's instead Hamato Yoshi who is part of this story. If you don't know, in the comics, Hamato Yoshi dies in the Shredder's hands, and this is what leads Splinter to train Turtles to kill Shredder. But apparently, Shredder was jealous of Splinter when they were younger in Japan, and so he decides to frame Splinter for trying to assassinate their mentor, who was coming to visit them, basically. He basically puts a knife to his shirt, causing him to get stuck, but when Splinter tries to remove the knife, it almost ends up looking like he's trying to murder him. But because of this, Yoshi's forced to flee, and he decides to live in the sewers, and this is where Shredder has been secretly spying on Hamato Yoshi, and so he decides to throw some canister of ooze. But the Turtles and Splinter don't actually know who did this until they find out later. But apparently this ooze spills all over the Turtles, and this time it's pink instead of being green in the comics. But This is what causes the Turtles to mutate. Instead of being like baby little kid turtles, they instead just grow up automatically as gigantic turtles. But it also mutates Splinter because he often would play around with the rats. But as much as his origin is silly, it makes sense. But Ninja Turtles is not meant to be taken seriously since it's more of a fun cartoon. But this is how they get their names: Leonardo, Donatello, Raphael, and Michelangelo. But April is fascinated by this story, but she wants to still tell their story to the news, but the Turtles don't want that because they want to keep their identity a secret. But they decide to go out in the open, where they decide to wear disguises after encountering some old lady who has a gun, a blaster. And that scene was crazy, but the Turtles have to wear disguises now, and this is a common trope in the show, where the Turtles end up wearing like trench coats and a hat to blend in with the people since they wouldn't understand them. But they all decide to go to some pizza shop, and even this sketchy neighborhood has various ninja themed stuff. But what happens is it's actually a trap set up by the Shredder, who is going to basically kidnap them because he wants the Turtles, to join him. So they kidnap April, and so the Turtles go out looking for April. And this is a common trope in the show where April gets kidnapped and the Turtles gotta rescue her. But it leads to a fight between the Turtles and the supposed foot ninja. But it's revealed that they are robots, the foot ninjas. Not like in the comics where they're actually human. They probably chose robots because they didn't want the Turtles to kill, so they just chose robots, which makes sense. But the Turtles defeat the robots and they free April, and we get this infamous scene. I'll talk about this just once, but we get this animation error where Mikey, it almost looks like Mikey's touching April's, but I guess that was just an animation error. But even April couldn't even remember all the Turtles' names. She mistakes each of them. But this is what leads to the Turtles to continue on their journey to find Shredder and find who did this to Splinter, but they still don't know about the Shredder yet. But until it isn't revealed till the second episode, Enter the Shredder, this is where the Turtles end up finding out about the Technodrome, because the Technodrome is a big part of this show, where it's mainly the weapon Krang uses. It's like a giant Death Star ball with a giant eye. But it turns out the Shredder is working for Krang. And I forgot to mention who's played by Shredder. He's played by the awesome James Avery, Uncle Phil from the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I thought it was wild they chose him to play the Shredder, but he's got a really good voice. It's so over the top and cartoony, you just love it. And Pat Frey plays Krang in this show. He's got that voice to him, but apparently Krang is the boss to Shredder. But the big thing about this episode is when the Turtles are sleeping, they end up sleeping without their mask, and even April wakes them up. And this is wild because I've always been fascinated about the Turtles not wearing their ninja mask, and this is the full-on episode where they do not wear their ninja mask. But the main thing that goes on throughout these episodes, I'm already gone over the first episode. But apparently the second episode is basically just them trying to find out about the Technodrome, but with the help of Splinter. But Splinter gets kidnapped in this episode, and the Turtles actually meet Shredder for the first time. And I love this scene where Shredder says, "You should join the legendary Foot Clan." And then Leonardo says, "Why on earth would we want to do that?" Because, and this is where Shredder actually reveals that he was the one that mutated them in the first place. And so Shredder's trying to be like a somewhat father figure, but it's actually just all manipulation because Shredder's evil and he knows it. But the Turtles end up freeing Splinter and saving him. Sorry if I skipped a bunch of things, but the main thing about this whole season is April is not really trusting the Turtles until like maybe the last few episodes of this season. But the main thing that goes on in this season is Shredder wants to recruit a mutant like gangster, and this is where he recruits two mutants that are going to be mutated. Two guys are subjected who are going to be mutated into a rhino and a warthog. And this is where we get Bebop and Rocksteady. So Bebop and Rocksteady are meant to just be goons to Shredder. They basically do his dirty work. But when they get mutated, they actually look super cool, even though they're super dumb throughout the whole show. And they actually got a pretty good voice to them. I even forgot to mention the turtle voice actors. I'll get to them in a bit. But when they first try to attack the Turtles, they end up jumping. Even though they had to go through the Oswald courses of the various Technodrome, when they do find it underground. But when they do escape, they realize they gotta make a next move to take down the Shredder for good. But I think the third episode is where we meet Baxter Stockman. So in the comics, Baxter Stockman is black. But in this show, he's white. I wonder why. It's weird. People love whining about how April's black in the new version. And they don't even note how Baxter Stockman's race was changed. So it's just a weird double standard with the outrage YouTubers. But that's a different topic. But Baxter Stockman is a very nerdy scientist in this show who's going to use his Mausers to take out the world's rats problem, but they all think he's crazy until he's recruited by the Shredder to find a way to take out the Turtles, and so he's going to send his Mausers to take them out, and it's just a wild episode. It kind of does still follow the Mirage storyline, where in the next comic, after they go up against Shredder, the second comic is where they meet Baxter Stockman, who is working on the Mausers, and he's revealed to be a crazy scientist. But the turtles are able to defeat Baxter Stockman and humiliate him, causing him to go out of business in his workshop. And he ends up fleeing the scene. This isn't the last we see of Baxter Stockman, but the whole point of his character that he eventually becomes a fly. But we'll get more into that when we get into season 2. But yeah, the Baxter episode was definitely a good episode for sure. Since this is I don't know if you know who Michelle Ivy is. She's a massive turtle fan, and this is her first episode of the show that she watched. So this is definitely special to her for sure. But the 4th episode is where the hot rodding teenagers from Dimension X. So this is where we first learn about Dimension X, which is basically where Krang's from, and he's trying to unleash the Technodrone from. But this is where we meet General Trag, who is basically Krang's boss or henchman, who basically commands a stone army. And Trag is basically trying to help Krang get from Dimension X, but when Shredder and Krang want to open the wormhole from the Technodrone, they end up unleashing these group of teenagers who ride some gigantic car. But this is where we actually first see the turtle van in this show, and I bet every kid wanted to get the turtle van. Even I wanted to get the turtle van as a kid, and I finally did for Christmas. But Donnie ends up building the sort of turtle van from an abandoned van that they stole from earlier in the episodes. With the help of April, they were able to build this, and Leo at first doesn't approve of it because he wants to practice his swords, but Donnie assures them that they have enough space so they can use the turtle van. And it looks super cool, but they are bumped into by the teenagers from Dimension X. I forget their names, so sorry. But they look like these elf dudes. They're first thought to be enemies, but then they realize that they're allies and not friends of Krang. But it becomes a big hiatus in this whole episode where they are encountered by General Trag and they're trying to do their best to stop him. But eventually they are. But this is where it leads to the final episode where Krang is finally able to unleash the Technodrone, where it's deep underground still, but he needs a body so he can command his army. But the 5th episode where things get really good, where Shredder has finally built his body, and he's going to use it to take over New York City. And the Turtles are going to encounter them, and Splinter decides to tag along, but they are interrupted by Shredder transmission, like on the TV where he's revealed that he has a retromugen ray, which he built, which is ironic because in the 2012 show, they spent a whole season trying to find a way to make retromugen. It only takes Shredder 5 episodes to build one. But the Turtles think this is an opportunity to turn Splinter back, since they want him to be human so he can live his human life. But this is where they get the idea that Shredder could use this on them, and so they can turn back into ordinary turtles. Even Mikey is bummed out by this, but they all decide to team up and find a way to stop Krang and Shredder. But they are encountered by Bebop and Rocksteady, and this is where we see Bebop and Rocksteady, who they actually seem pretty dangerous in this episode, where they choke Splinter and the other turtles to death, where Donnie is going back to Baxter's lab so he can find a way to stop Krang's Technodrone. But he builds his thing, but they're also gonna rebuild the hot rod, which they got from the elf dudes, who also went home in the last episode. But Bebop and Rocksteady eventually are stopped and thrown into a giant hay thing or whatever. they're splattered by, I don't know why I said hay, but they're dropped by some substance. But the Bebop and Rocksteady tell them to go back and fight. But after this episode, Bebop and Rocksteady kind of just become joke characters. But the turtles eventually are encountered by Krang, who is able to turn himself gigantic. But this is where Splinter comes in. He's able to sneak into the Technodrome, where he's encountered by the Shredder, and they finally have their showdown. But Splinter's able to beat Shredder, of course. But the Turtles do find a way to destroy Krang by sneaking into his body and able to destroy the power cell that enabled to shrink him back to normal. And April decides to find a way to show the Turtles in action. But she pulls out her camera and she's able to get help from her other news reporters. I forgot to mention, we also see Vernon Fedwick, who is another minor antagonist of the Channel 6 team. Byrne and Vernon are basically the ones who think the Turtles are bad guys. And April basically has to keep defending them, saying they're the good guys. But this is the only episode where Vernon actually wants to help the Turtles out. But other than that, he just becomes the annoying antagonist to the Turtles. But April almost gets fired by Byrne until she threatens to blow up the Channel 6 building with a turtle cell, which she has, which is basically going to be a phone for April. But she ends up showing that the Turtles are the heroes. They stop Krang. The Technodrome is stopped. But Shredder ends up fleeing the scene after capturing Splinter. But he's going to use the retromuging ray on the Turtles. But Splinter is able to sneak out just in time to stop Shredder. But unfortunately, Splinter is going to stay as human for a while. But the day is saved. The Turtles celebrate with pizza, of course. And that's the first 5 episodes of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the 80s show. So this season was a lot of fun. This is probably the most, time to polish the show, because the other seasons, they were on a deadline. And so the episode got released once a day. And so it probably took a lot of the animators' time just to make this show happen, because a lot of animation errors happened throughout this whole show until the 8th season. But that's a different story. We'll get more into that when we get to season 2. So I give this season, why not, a 10 out of 10. It's a lot of fun. It's what made Ninja Turtles what it is today, even if it is a giant toy commercial. But that was a lot of cartoons back then. So what do you think of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? I forgot to mention the voice cast. We got the amazing Clam Clark as Leonardo, Rob Paulson as Raphael, Barry Gordon as Donatello, and Townsend Coleman as Michael